Hello. For this video, this is for one of the assignments that we had from class 331, ED 331, and we are just supposed to do a post-assessment debrief meeting. And so basically the way that I kind of chose to set this up is to have Katie here. She's going to act as sort of like my maybe co-teacher. And we're just going to kind of like discuss briefly like kind of what the plan was. I think it'll be a little bit, it won't flow as naturally as it probably would, but the idea is that you kind of get an idea of what we're supposed to kind of be talking about. So to start, we designed and engaged a relevant relative summative assessment that's aligned with Common Core state standards for fourth grade students. The standard we chose was a range of reading and complexity of text, standard specifically RL.10, and that standard states, by the end of the year, students will read and comprehend literature, including stories, dramas, and poetry in the 4th to 5th grade complexity band proficiently, with scaffolding needed at the high end of the range. The idea, essentially what we did was we told students that they would read a piece of literature from the class novel that we've been reading, which is called Where the Mountain Meets the Moon. And then they would do a Flipgrid video, which is one of the provided resources we have. And we kind of like to think that the reason we did that is because of maybe in the age of COVID, that would be a reasonable way to do like a presentation. And this, it makes sense too, because the standard is kind of like the final standard. It's kind of the big one. Can you read and proficiently understand, the literature in your grade level? So essentially, students read this piece of literature. Can they comprehend it? So like I said, the assignment's to read literature from Where the Mountain Meets the Moon, and then the idea is that they're going to do a Flipgrid video where they're going to read the last 3 chapters of the book. They're going to discuss those last 3 chapters, explaining what they understood from the story, which would demonstrate that they comprehended it. The text provided, I just told you about that. The students should be able to explain the theme of the story, ultimately being that good things happen to good people, and they should be able to explain in detail, how the story ends, which is ultimately that the girl, gives her question, which is more like a wish, to the dragon, who was kind of her friend in the novel. Students would also be required to comment on at least 2 of their peers' responses in order to create an environment of community learning. So just kind of on that first section, what we assume we would see is that students, a lot of them kind of to meet those direct standards. We noticed that they didn't, there's a few that didn't do it.
They didn't. Yeah.
And then there was also a few students that missed some of the points, like, being able to comment on people's videos. And there was a few students that did really well.
Yep, definitely.
And there was a few students that understood what happened and explained, but they didn't understand the deeper meaning. So that's where we're going to get into the next section where we want to cover here. And excuse my partner, she wasn't there for any of the lessons, so she's kind of just I need to talk to a colleague, so she's the colleague. I'm really talking to myself. Okay, so we wanted to examine the data, right? So that's kind of part of the rubric, and generate at least 2 pieces of specific constructive feedback. So the results are that, basically what the student should be able to say is that the girl ultimately gets what she wanted. But the deeper meaning of the text should be more that the main character of the story, by doing the right thing, accomplished much more than she had originally hoped to, and had a fantastic result, and that was far beyond just the tangible rewards of the novel. So,
and some of the kids definitely got that.
Some of the kids did get that, but they didn't explain it or articulate their thoughts or their understanding as well as we would have hoped they would. So some of the examples what we're looking for is to understand the theme and to understand the deeper layers. And a lot like theme, the things that are not necessarily directly listed in the text, but that are implied. A good example, non-tangible things that we were hoping to see in their explanations is, did the students recognize that the mother smiled and was very happy about the way this all played out, and she didn't smile the whole novel. She was never happy. Did they recognize the benefits of the village gaining a prosperous forest? Not just that it happened, but what were those benefits, and is there a deeper layer there? Did the whole village get to prosper off of this wish coming true? And then overall, did they recognize that the theme is that good things happen to good people? So again, some students recognized that did happen. A lot of students, kind of had what we expected were the likely responses, though. And the likely responses were students would simply just describe what happened and exactly what the results were enlisted in the text. And there was no deeper layers. So, in fact, I would argue that about 50% or more of the students pretty much just said exactly what happened in the last 3 chapters, which I could say is they comprehended it on a surface level.
Yeah.
But they would say things like, well, the girl got the pearl and then she was able to sell it for a lot of money. Or they'll say the mountain grew fruitful trees. And that's because I think their level of comprehension is pretty limited. And I don't think they're searching for those deeper meanings yet. And they're
still just factual.
Yeah. And for, I think, a lot of the students, it's hard for them to read the story to begin with. So to understand the words, their comprehension skills are not there because their vocabulary skills aren't there. So I think in the future we could spend more time working on the vocabulary before we read the chapters to try to build that vocabulary.
Or discuss some juicy words as you read.
Right. Another thing I think we could do there to kind of improve is read the chapters together as a class before we leave, before we have them go home or whatever and do it, or even it's age of COVID, maybe we read it to them via the computer and then encourage them to read again on their own with their families and then do the flip grid presentation. So the ideas there would be, that's a couple of ideas. Another couple of ideas we think we could do to improve the lesson is obviously if it wasn't COVID, we could do the lesson just in the form of a class presentation instead of on the computer. We think we could choose, we think that the students could also write an essay if they wanted to. And writing an essay would also probably benefit us hitting some other writing standards too, which might be helpful. And it would allow a lot of the students who are shy and don't like to talk or who aren't very good at talking to begin with, maybe a chance to shine a little more.
Definitely.
And then based on the assessment data, 2 accommodations that we think we got a couple. We think that some students could be offered the opportunity to read text that's a little easier, lower grade level, if they struggle to comprehend the class novel. There's definitely at least 2 or 3 students in the class with disabilities, with reading disabilities, specific learning reading disabilities that struggle to comprehend the 4th grade level text. Maybe we could have offered them easier text, 2nd grade level text. But then I wonder if that would be hitting the 4th grade standard. I guess it doesn't matter because they have IEPs, but that's something.
That's something else to talk more about later.
At least an idea to discuss or explore. And then students could be offered a chance to only comment on one person's video instead of 2 or more. Maybe we could even offer them to not have to comment on the videos at all. And also, students could be offered a choice of whether or not they want to do the Flipgrid video or write an essay. Maybe just giving them the choice to choose would be helpful, and then maybe we'd see that some of the students who chose to write the essay did a little better, and maybe we see the opposite happen.
Well, maybe if we assign time for them to comment on each other's videos. Rather than just let them do it, if we assign time for them to do it themselves.
Right, maybe we structure it a little bit more directly. And have a lot more involvement in that.
Right now, you're commenting on someone else's.
Okay, well, I think we pretty much covered the rubric there. So hopefully, our mock debrief, fake post-assessment debrief meeting went pretty well.
It went super well. It did great.
High five. Great co-teacher. See how that wasn't that hard. Bye.